Cash for keys goes sideways? Yes, that's what we talk about with our good friend and paralegal Bita Lisi right after this. Yes, my friends, as promised, it's our favorite paralegal, Bita Lisi. How are you?
I'm good, Gary. How are you?
I'm doing really, really good. Kind of a funky week with all sorts of news coming out of the Bank of Canada and everything. And we're going to talk about that. But I always love kicking off our videos with a story. What story do you have for us this week?
Well, Gary, on this week's episode, we had a landlord that had retained us to do a cash for keys because they wanted to sell the property. And we sent out the cash for keys proposal to the tenant last Friday. And over the weekend, I mean, our office, we're a law firm, we're closed over the weekend. We need that time to recuperate. And over the weekend, our client, without our permission, further negotiated the cash for keys proposal. Not only that, they didn't sign what they negotiated, and he actually sent them money. He sent the tenants money. And just yesterday, the tenant contacted us and said, well, it wasn't me that signed, though we have the information on DocuSign, though the location on the DocuSign documents show that property, though the IP address is probably the same as her cell phone, she's saying that it's not my signature.
Wow.
And now she's asking for more money if we want her to sign a new document. So the moral of the story is I mean, you're hiring a professional to get things done properly. If you can do it yourself, do it yourself. But the whole purpose of hiring a professional is so that we can guide you legally so that you don't get into any legal shambles. And now it looks like, not only is it going to cost him more money, we hope that the tenant signs the new documents.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I'm a true believer in never send your tenant money unless you know you have absolute 100% understanding what that outcome is going to be.
Yes.
Yeah, so actually, that brings a good point. When you do cash for keys, what is that formality? Do they have to have that unit vacated before they get the cash, or how's that work in your world?
So similar to real estate, okay? So we have to satisfy the elements of contract law. Think of an agreement of purchase and sale.
Sure.
So there's an offer, there's an acceptance, there's a deposit, so consideration, and then there is fulfillment or carrying out the contract or the terms until completion. Same thing with cash for keys, because the last thing you want is for a tenant to say, well, I signed an agreement to end the tenancy and I didn't get any payments. I need some money to secure another property. And if I can't have access to some funds, then I can't secure another property.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah,
we need
absolutely.
to satisfy the elements of contract law.
No, that's smart. And like we said, like you don't hand over money. Please don't. And unless you are absolutely understanding what that outcome is going to be and use, you like you said, you're hire a professional for specific reasons. Going through a back door does not help your cause. How about we say it like that?
No. Right? Yeah, you know what? A lot of times, Gary, they say, well, because your office was closed. The law firms are closed over the weekend. Yes, we're closed. But you can't do things over the weekend because the firm is closed, because the office is closed, right? Nothing is going to happen if you wait 1 or 2 days.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
But something will happen if you take, the steps that you think are the correct steps and they're actually not. It's going to cost you more time and it's going to cost you more money.
More money. And I know there might be landlords out there, people out there saying, well, I don't know what to say. I don't know this. Always use that third party as your scapegoat. I need to confirm, or I need to talk to my paralegal. I need to talk to my legal team. My legal team is handling this. They'll be in contact with you on Monday. Use it. Use us as the professionals as your scapegoat.
That's the whole point. That's right. I mean, what happens when somebody knocks on a house that's on a door of a house that's listed? What do the sellers say? Call my agent. Call the person on the sign. The same
Exactly.
thing. Call
Yeah.
Bita. Call our legal rep. She
That's it.
knows.
It's exactly it, my
It's
friends.
yourself.
That's it. That's it. So, well, and you think to yourself, wow, and I know you are in the thick of things where you are supporting landlords like myself, and every time we think we've heard it all, there's always one little tweak or turn, and you're like, well, yeah, okay, that's another one for our memory banks, and the best part is you now get to take this experience and advice to your next client,
That's right.
right? And
That's right.
yeah,
I actually have another story.
we got two for today. Okay, let's
We
have it.
have two for today. I just remembered it, and I have it written down here.
Excellent.
So we evicted, or we're in the process of evicting a tenant for non-payment of rent. Okay, apparently this guy came into millions of dollars overseas,
Of
but he
course he
owes
did.
30. Of course he did, right? But he owes $30,000 in rent. And what he did is we had a non-payment of rent hearing probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he didn't show up. But what he told the board was that he couldn't show up, and he reached out to us to agree to a rescheduling. And we had showed up at the hearing, and we said no, we did not agree to a rescheduling. It is a huge prejudice to the landlord considering they're owed $30,000. And the board granted our request for an eviction order, a standard order, which is an
Okay.
11-day order. Okay. We received that order. We filed with the sheriff a few days ago for enforcement. Just yesterday, the tenant went to the board and he filed a request for a review. And a request for a review, Gary, is only if you're not able to attend a hearing or because there's an error in law or an error in fact. And in his request for review, he said that he logged into a hearing room, not the hearing room that he was required to attend because he couldn't remember. And the adjudicator that heard his matter where he logged on granted his adjournment request. And that's why, I mean, he doesn't understand why he's being evicted if that adjudicator granted his adjournment request. Well, firstly, what everyone needs to know is that all hearings are recorded. So when people put requests for review, the receiving end actually goes to that video hearing and tries to see, is this person being truthful in their application? Well, surprise, surprise, there was no video hearing of this guy logging into anywhere. More importantly, even if there was, there's always a process, right? You can't just log in and say, Adjudicator Gary, can I have an adjournment? Right? The adjudicator can only hear matters that are in front of him. They cannot adjourn or request to
Right.
reschedule. So we received the order, and his request to reschedule was denied.
Yeah.
And he lost all credibility there.
Yeah.
So don't lie. Come
Yeah.
on, guys, don't lie. The board is not stupid. The practice of the board is sometimes slow, but they're not stupid. They're
Not
in law.
stupid. Yeah, I like that one. It's kind of like the dash cam that people now are starting to put in their cars, right? It's recordings are out there for a reason, and
That's right.
it's to keep everyone accountable, right? It's to
Yeah,
keep the system
yeah,
accountable. Yeah.
yeah. And if you lose credibility, that's it. You lose credibility. You're done.
There you go. There you go. So obviously we've had a pretty interesting week with the Bank of Canada and interest rates affect investors, and you're seeing something perhaps quicker than maybe I would as a realtor because you're handling with and you're talking with investors on a day-to-day basis. Talk to us a little bit about the interest rate hike and your experience and some of the conversations you're having with your investors.
So a lot of my smaller investors, I would say,
Yeah.
the bigger investors, I mean, they have deeper pockets, but the smaller investors who have the one or two properties in addition to their, the family home, with the rise of interest rates, they're not able to reach into their pockets to carry or offset the additional expenses. And that's related to mortgage because your property taxes remain the same, or if there's an increase, it's not as often as the interest rates. So they're resorting to selling the property. And that's if the tenant allows for, they allow for showings or if they cooperate. There are some tenants that stop paying.
Yeah.
And even though they're not directly affected by the interest rates, they kind of are, because when the interest rates go up, the cost of living tends to increase slightly. And when the cost of living tends to increase slightly, I mean, it just like Doug Ford said, when people may have to make a decision of paying their rent or paying for groceries, I mean, it's never a good idea not to pay the rent, ever.
Yeah.
Your number one priority is to keep a roof over your family's head. Never ever stop paying your rent. If people are experiencing a challenge with paying the rent, reach out to your landlords. Let them know, come up with some sort of an agreement. And I'll tell you, all it takes for you is to reach out. 90% of my landlords say if the tenant had difficulty, why didn't they just reach out? Why did they stop answering text messages? Why did they stop answering the phone? Why did they just stop paying? I would have helped them. And Gary, I don't think a lot of tenants realize that if they were to reach out and if they were say, I would make some of the payment, something, that their landlords would more than likely cooperate. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all people.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. It's good. It's good coaching for our investor clients, our landlords too, because sometimes we just assume, well, they know. Well, just like in any relationship, people don't read minds, right?
No, they
and
don't know.
and you don't want to set a precedent, but you do want to have the conversation. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, if you ever think that, or there's a possibility that the rent's going to be late, just call me and we'll
Yeah,
discuss it at that time. Just leave it like that. Like, and then that's a open communication, right?
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. You want to
Yeah.
keep those lines of communication open. It's
Yeah.
when one party shuts down that, the relationship starts deteriorating.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I know, we've had enough units. We've probably had over 50 or 60 different units over the years. And we know, tenants get into that mindset. Well, let's just say it's a $2,000 lease payment, rental payment. If I can't make the entire $2,000, I'm not going to make any of it. Well,
Yeah,
if they don't know that there's another option out there, they won't make that $2,000 or
that's
$1,700
right.
or $1,800 payment that they can make. Right.
That's right. And tenants have options. There's the rent bank that they can turn to,
Sure.
right? The rent bank is great because they will actually loan or give tenants up to 2 months rent. That and you have to read over the terms or the agreement. A portion of it does not have to be returned.
Mm,
So the rent bank is there. It's definitely a great resource. Tenants should really look into that if they genuinely feel that they won't be able to make the full rent.
yeah. And that's probably good. Um, Good communication skills and relationship building as a landlord. Hey, there's this feature out here, there's opportunity out here. If you think times are tough at this moment, leverage some of the knowledge that you have. Don't rely on the tenant thinking they know all the answers. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting, really really interesting. Um, I know, it feels like sometimes our videos get repetitive, but they're repetitive for a reason. That's because, the same thing keeps happening over and over again. And our goal in these videos, as you know, Bita, is to shed some light on it. Sometimes it's funny, but sometimes it's not. And of course, the people under hard times is not funny, but there
Yeah.
are resources out there that we need to leverage, correct?
Definitely, definitely. If you don't ask, you don't get, right?
Yeah.
But there are resources out there that are will help you. And
Yeah.
even if your matter were to go to the board will ask you, "What have you done?" And if you say, "Well, I haven't done anything. I've just not paid the rent." Well, you can't just not do anything. What happens if you don't pay your mortgage? Right?
Yeah.
The bank doesn't say, "Well,
Knock,
what
knock.
have you done?" Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. You know what we should do is just in a couple of minutes here, talk to us a little bit about, and I'm just throwing this out at you, but what that experience is like when you go to the board and you have a hearing, and I know everything's online right now. We've touched on it briefly over the last several videos, but so the question or the comment is, what happens after you get your hearing date? You appear online. What does it look like? Who's online with you? Who are you talking to? Is the tenant there? We've also learned that sometimes the tenant isn't there, but what's that kind of look like from your perspective?
So let's talk about that. So when you log into a hearing, you don't automatically get put into a hearing room. Okay. So you have someone called a moderator who takes attendance. And that person who takes attendance will say, Gary, who are you? Identify yourself. And you're going to say, well, I'm here here's the file number. I'm the landlord for this property address. They will log you in and they will give you a docket number. Before you get too excited, right? If you're docket 1 or 2, it doesn't mean your matter will be heard first or second.
Right.
The docket number is just so that they know who you are. Instead of you saying, I'm Gary, this is my file number, this is my address, this is my tenant. No, I'm docket number 2, and that's it. We know exactly who you are. And then they say, Gary, are you open to mediation? Guys, it's just a yes or no question. People don't care of what, the conversations you had or the attempts you made. You have no idea how frustrating it is when legal reps sit here and say, oh my God, this guy has to explain his life story now. Just answer yes or no, right? And the moderator will interrupt you and they'll just say yes or no. That's just a yes or no question. So yes or no to mediation. If you say no, then you'll just wait until your matter is called. If you say yes, then you have to wait to be heard by a board certified mediator. It happens on the same day of your hearing, on your same hearing block. The mediator is a board certified mediator, meaning that they are a third party. Hopefully they're non-biased. They will put you and the other party, the tenant, in a breakout room to have a discussion or a meeting of the minds. And I always tell my clients, mediation is great because you have an influence on the outcome of the matter. Right? You're not always going to get 100% of what you want. Think of it as a marriage, right? You don't always get 100%, but you may, if you negotiate, you may get 70 or 75%, which is still better than having somebody else decide who doesn't know what the matter is, who only listened to your case for 1 or 2 minutes. So mediation is great. However, often, whatever you discuss in mediation, there's not always a meeting of the minds. If the parties cannot agree to terms in mediation, they will have no option but to wait for the matter to be heard in front of the adjudicator. And again, when it goes in front of the adjudicator, you're rolling the dice at the board because anything can happen, right? Remember, this person doesn't know the facts, they don't know the evidence, and quite frankly, they don't really care. They hear your side, they hear the other side, and they say, okay, I'm going to send my decision in the mail with the reasons. They just apply the law.
Yeah.
Right? So mediation is definitely where you want to have the matter resolved.
Yeah, I know from my past experience, that's always been the answer to that question for me is always yes. Do you want, is you open to mediation? Yes. And because you will also, you perhaps will learn more, call it intel or information about your matter and what can help you, and perhaps another obstacle that you gotta get over too. I always find that's a better, and there's different things, and we can probably get into the real nitty and gritty of this and into the weeds of this in future videos. Decisions that can be made at mediation, the types of evictions that can happen there and everything else, and payment plans and things like that. We should probably talk about that in the future on some of our future calls, because we just assume it's yay or nay. You either get evicted or you don't get evicted. Well, there's some middle ground too.
There's the middle ground.
Right? So we should probably talk about that in the future videos. But it's always a pleasure to do videos with you. I'm always enlightened and I enjoy our calls. How do people get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me is head over to our website, stonegatelegalservices.ca. You can actually book a 20-minute discovery call with our team right on the website, or send us an email. Our email is on the website, info@stonegatelegalservices.ca. You can definitely watch our videos, but also another way to get a hold of us or connect with us is on social media. Like us, follow us on Facebook and Instagram @Stonegate Legal Services.
Excellent, excellent. So for a bit of Lisi, I'm Gary McGowan. We'll see everybody on the next video. Goodbye for now.